Of all the subjects which comprise what nowadays is called occultism, the most misunderstood of all is magic. Even alchemy, which to some of us is annoyingly dark and obscure, evokes far more sympathy and understanding, as a rule, than does magic. For example, the psychologist Jung has observed of alchemy in his essay The Ego and the Unconscious that it would be an unpardonable depreciation of value if we were to accept the current view and reduce the spiritual striving of the alchemists to the level of the retort and the smelting furnace. Certainly this aspect belonged to it. It represented the tentative beginnings of exact chemistry. But it also had a spiritual side which has never yet been given its true value, and which from the psychological standpoint must not be underestimated. Yet magic, strange to say, receives no such evaluation, except in so far as the term magic is allied to the unconscious, and is said to represent a primitive attempt to cognize the unconscious. There is, hence, hardly more than the barest minimum attempt to arrive at an understanding of its processes. For the moment, I do not wish to analyze the possible reasons for this amazing phenomenon. What is more to the point, however, is to provide some more or less intelligible approach to the subject, so that given an initial glimpse of the bright light flooding the world of magic, more people may feel disposed to devote just a little of their energies and time to its study. The advantages and benefits are such as to make this effort extremely worth while. Putting it simply and briefly, let me say at the outset that magic concerns itself in the main with that self-same world, as does modern psychology. That is to say, it deals with that sphere of the psyche of which normally we are not conscious but which exerts an enormous influence upon our lives. Magic is a series of psychological techniques so devised as to enable us to probe more deeply into ourselves. To what end? First, that we shall understand ourselves more completely. Apart from the fact that such self-knowledge in itself is desirable, an understanding of the inner nature releases us from unconscious compulsions and motivations and confers a mastery over life. Second, that we may the more fully express that inner self in everyday activities. It is only when mankind, as a whole, has reached, or perhaps when the more advanced men and women in the world have evolved, some degree of inner realization that we may ever hope for that ideal utopian condition of things, a wide tolerance, peace, and universal brotherhood. It is to ends such as these that magic owes its raison d'etre. Approaching the matter from another point of view, it may be said that magic deals with the same problems as religion. It does not waste its or our valuable time with futile speculations with regard to the existence or nature of God. It affirms dogmatically that there is an omnipresent and eternal life principle, and thereupon, in true scientific fashion, lays down a host of methods for proving it for oneself. How may we know God? Here, as before, there is a well-defined and elaborate technique for dealing with the human consciousness as such and exalting it to an immediate experience of the universal spirit permeating and sustaining all things. I say advisedly that its technique is well-defined. For the system has an abhorrence of the attitude of those good-natured but muddle-headed thinkers who, refusing to accept their human limitations, as they are now, aim too high without dealing with the manifold problems in the way. Let us assume that yonder building is 10 stories high. How may we reach the roof? Certainly not by ignoring the very obvious fact that at least 200 feet intervene between us and the roof. Yet that is precisely the attitude of the so-called simplicity cult in mystical religion. God, they affirm, is an exalted state of infinite consciousness to which the microcosmic mind must be united. So far, so good, and here magic is in accord with their view. Therefore, these people propose to attempt gaining the summit of attainment by ignoring the steps between man, as we find him now, and the supreme end, God. It is as though they wish to jump from the ground to the roof of the aforesaid building. Magic adopts a slightly different attitude. It is one, however, which is markedly similar to the common sense attitude of the mythical man in the street. To get to the top of the building we must either climb the various flights of stairs leading there, or else take the lift upwards. In either case, it is a graduated process, an evolution, if you wish. Man, holds the magical theory, is a more or less complicated creature whose several faculties of feeling, sensation, and thinking have slowly been evolved in the course of eons of evolution. It is fatal to ignore these faculties, for evidently they were evolved for some useful purpose in answer to some inner need. Hence, in aspiring towards divine union, surely a laudable goal, we must be quite sure that our method, whatever it is, takes into consideration those faculties and develops them to the stage where they too may participate in the experience. If evolution is held up as a suitable process, then the whole man must evolve, and not simply little bits or aspects of him, whilst other parts of his nature are left undeveloped at a primitive or infantile level of being. Moreover, these faculties must be so trained as to be able to take the enormous tension sure to be imposed upon them by so exalted but nevertheless so powerful an attainment. Each faculty must be deliberately trained and carried stage by stage through various levels of human and cosmic consciousness, so that gradually they become accustomed to the high potential of energy, ideation, and inspiration that must inevitably accompany illumination and an extension of consciousness. Failure to consider such a viewpoint in terms of its dynamics undoubtedly must account for the catastrophes so frequently encountered in occult and mystical circles.